good people. I'm sure they're well-intended, well-intentioned. But at the end of the day, what Barney Frank is saying is we should cut our defense by 25% or 30% so that we can put more money for social programs.
Okay.
Our Constitution, our founding fathers, the lifeblood of this nation, what the core function of government is to provide for the national defense. It's not to provide social programming. It's not to do these other things. Let's focus on what we need to keep this nation safe. There is some money we can save. I've seen defense acquisitions up close. There's money we can save, and we can cut down some of the spending. But we don't do that by cutting muscle, which is essentially what he's proposing.
Right.
We don't do it by walking away from our allies. We don't do it by, he says playing policeman to the world, so why do we have troops in Europe? Well, one of the reasons we have troops in Europe is it allows deployment to other places. One of the reasons we have troops in Europe is it allows for intelligence gathering and intelligence operations in other parts of the world. One of the reasons, there's many good reasons to have troops in the world, and only somebody who's fairly naive about the state of the military, the state of the world, would say, well, we don't need troops there anymore because the Soviets don't have tanks on the border. Well, it's a lot more complicated than that, and it's dangerous to make policy that way. So I differ substantially from Barney Frank on the defense issue.
Yeah. Now, are you a big government guy, or are you a smaller government guy?
I think even most liberals wouldn't say I'm a big government guy. People get it.
Got to ask the questions. Got to ask the questions.
There's such a thing as too much government. We all recognize that. We define what that is differently. For me, it's let's return to our core constitutional roots. The great thing about that document is that it says, here's what government should be. It's also extremely flexible. If people say, hey, the government should have the right, the authority to tell me that I need to buy health insurance, great, put in an amendment. That's the beauty of the document. You can always amend it. It's really hard to amend it. An amendment like that won't get through,
right?
But it's within the realm of possibility. And so what I like about focusing on the Constitution is it's that return to the limits. You say there's a natural boundary for government. The progressive philosophy is eternally expansive. Today, government is twice the size it was 20 years ago. It's twice the size. What is it 20 years, 40 years from now? How big is the government at that point?
It's already smothering us now.
That's right. That's right. It's going to more and more sectors of the economy, more and more sectors of our lives.
That's what they're seeing in a lot of the places in Europe now.
Right.
That it's all basically all government, and they're falling apart now because they can't afford to. They can't afford to just continue subsidizing themselves.
And people have grown so used to that they riot when they have to work more than 38 hours a week, or retire at the age of 53, or whatever the case may be.
I had heard that in Greece that almost everybody there works for the government in one form or another, and they retire. I think it is in the early 50s. It's nice work if you can get it, but I mean, who pays for all that?
Right, and that's the real question.
And there's just not enough people to pay for it, and that's why they're in the dire straits they are. And it looks like that's the push is to head towards that kind of a government. And I think that's pushing. I think that's flying in the face of a lot of people, and I think that's part of the aura that's going on now. That's around the country. I mean, you're running for one seat in one state, and there's a lot of you out there.
Right.
There's a lot of you out there, and it's not limited to federal. It's state, local, and everything else, and it's from the ground up. It's truly a grassroots phenomenon.
Absolutely.
And it's good to see some young people and new people in there and different people. We've had different people on here as guests, and this has been a real good place for them to stop and get their message out.
Sure.
So that's why you're here as our guest. Let me ask you a question now. We've talked about. Let's see. How about another hot button issue now? Because we have, I guess, the governor of Arizona coming for the governor's conference to our state. And how do you feel about the whole border security deal and immigration and everything?
First of all, I'm astounded at the Obama administration's gall. So their justification for going after the state of Arizona is that it's not the state's business to regulate immigration and secure the borders. It's the federal government's business. Well, I couldn't agree more. If the federal government had been doing its job, Arizona wouldn't have had to step forward with those regulations, with that law.
Right.
I think the starting point on any discussion on immigration has to be border security.
Okay.
Without border security, we can't have a serious discussion. If we have open borders, if we have the ability for anybody to come in, come out whenever they want, and for us to not understand who is coming in, why they're going to be here, how long they're going to be, and where they're going to be, then how can we possibly reform immigration? So the first thing we have to do is secure our borders.
Okay.
That's true in the South. That's true in the North. The Canadian borders are just as much of a joke. It's just there are fewer people trying to cross them.
Right.
We have almost no real port security.
No.
You know, these container ships come in. About 2% of them are actually searched. So there's the possibility for WMD, bioterror, chemical terror. There's human trafficking, arms trafficking. It's scary. And we have to get serious about that. That's got to be the starting point. And a few weeks back, the Obama administration floated this idea that they were going to unilaterally provide amnesty to anybody who was in the country.
Plan B.
Yeah. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That seemingly intelligent people would sit there and think that it was good policy and good politics. You keep on doing that sort of thing, I'm going to get elected. So is every other challenger in the country.
I think it was a trial balloon, and it was a lead one at that.
Yeah, right.
And
but the fact that they even threw it out there shows how they're thinking, and it shows how out of touch they are with.
But he's only one man. He's got a lot of people working with him, and that's the people that people are angry at.
Absolutely, and I don't say President Obama is coming up with all this stuff, but at the end of the day, you blame the CEO for the actions of the company.
Or the one before him, even more.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is so many times I talk to people and they say, well, you Republicans are all alike, and George Bush this, George Bush that, and I say, look, George Bush may be what he was, but I'm not George Bush.
Right.
I'm not running as a George Bush candidate. Right. So stop talking about this guy. He left office a year and a half ago. Let's move on and talk about the problems we face today. So.
Right. Okay. So anyways, now let me ask you a couple items here, some nuts and bolts stuff, like cap and trade. What's the deal with that now? How do you, what's the, is that something? I mean, is there something to it, or is it just another
it's interesting.
It's
interesting. It was initially a Republican, a conservative idea 20 years ago.
Okay.
But it was limited. It was very limited. It was in specific sectors of the energy industry, and there were going to be markets formed, and it was. But what's happened is, again, this expansive approach. Hey, the more of the economy we can get the government involved in, the more good we can do. Well, the problem is that at the end of the day, that good involves taking money from some people, giving it to others, and in the process, losing wealth, destroying value. That's the problem. That's the fundamental problem with reallocation of wealth, is that a government organization isn't going to get it right. And it's not because it's not good people trying to work hard, trying to do the right thing. It's because they lack the knowledge that somebody inside the business is going to have. They lack the incentives that people in the free market are going to have. And so the result is you're going to destroy value. So the cap and trade legislation that the administration is trying to push through is a debacle. It's not going to solve the problem it intends to solve. It's going to destroy all sorts of value across the economy. It does look like they're starting to realize the political implications of what they're trying to do, and they've scaled it back somewhat, so I'm happy about that. But I still think that they're going to try and ram it through the Congress, just like they did health care, just like they have so many things.
Some health care questions for you.
They couldn't get 35 members of the Democratic Party to vote for health care. They only passed it by 4 votes.
Right.
How can you say that that's legislation that the American people want?
Well, it's not the same thing that American people don't want. A lot of things. I don't think most American people want to be suing the state of Arizona.
Well, I think you're right.
Especially people who live in Arizona. They're suing themselves.
That's right. and it's costing them money to defend the suit. It's costing us money for it. Yeah, it's a mess.
Unfortunately, and regardless of anything else, if you don't live there, you don't understand the problem.
No, that's a great point.
We don't really have a border here in Massachusetts.
That's right.
And I don't know that they're necessarily worried about people running across and picking fruit or lettuce or whatever. I think there's bigger
there's
issues
a lot of crime issues along the border.
They're having people shot.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to take territory and everything else. And I think living down there shines a different light on it. I don't feel right telling them how to live their life when they're dealing with a problem.
The people in San Francisco,
I've
made this argument before. The people in San Francisco are not in the right position, like you said, to judge what's going on the border.
Right. They don't tell us when to stop harvesting scallops and stuff. So,
exactly.
It all's fair, right? So, anyways, let's talk about the district for a minute. Now, this is Massachusetts, and that's all we're really dealing with here. In the 4th congressional district is what it is that you want to be representative of, and Where does that go now geographically? You don't have to name every town, but
Sure.
I mean,
There's 29 towns. It starts in Brookline, where I live, Newton, Wellesley, and kind of heads down in a thin strip, which includes this town,
yeah, Mansfield, yeah,
and then goes along the south coast,
right.
Fall River all the way over to Wareham in the east.
Now, why do you think it's done why do you think it's set up like that? I know you're laughing, and I kind of know, but I want, why don't you explain why?
Very
why is it set up
specifically,
like that?
it's set up to protect Barney Frank. Each of the districts in the state is drawn to protect a Democratic seat, to enable a Democrat to continue to win. And this district, if you look at it on a map, is preposterous. Nobody would think it makes any sense.
Right.
But it's drawn that way to protect Congressman Frank.
There's no real relationship between the people on either end of the scale.
It's a set of different problems, a set of different, it's a different economic environment, it's a set of different professions, it's very different.
And to me, it would seem like it would be hard to work in a district like that, where there's so many different, like I said, there's so many different, there's different cultures, there's different everything. I mean, people in Brookline have very little in common with, people down in Taunton, or, we're at Fall River, or, it's odd.
I think that's largely true.
They
and
really
what it
don't
demands is a lot of listening. You need to go around and you need to listen to people, and you need to hear what's going on in their towns, in their lives, what's important to them. And that's really the role of legislators. That's really the role of representatives. And people who spend all their time in D.C., who spend 30 years there, lose that ability.
Right. And I know Congressman Frank he spends a lot of time in D.C. and some time up in Maine, but we won't get into that. And also, he spends a lot of time around here. Mm-hmm. He comes to town, I think, for an annual breakfast every year. My spies tell me he was in town this week playing a friendly game of cards. So he's a little bit, I guess during the summer he's around. I don't know about during in session. I don't think you see him too much, but he has office hours at the town halls, and part of my problem with office hours at town halls, they have them at 11 o'clock in the morning. Where am I? I'm working.
Right.
If I've got a concern, where does that leave me?
Right.
You got to kind of. So when you are elected, what would you do about that? Would you have your hours different times, or would you just?
I will spend every minute I can in this district.
No, but I'm saying
but then that enables you to set different hours and to be in different places at different times.
Do one in the morning,
and,
next one you do at night.
Right. I mean, if you're spending less time here, obviously, you're less flexible in the hours that you're available. It's that simple.
But it's not limited to Congressman Frank. It just seems like everybody. It's the same thing. Oh yeah, they'll have representatives at the town hall between 11 and 12, and it's like, well, that's nice. That's nice for people that are near the town hall.
Right.
A lot of people in this town work in Boston.
Right.
Very inconvenient to get in there. They don't all work right in town here.
Yeah, I mean, it's focusing, like you said, on when people are available, evenings, weekends, and being available and reaching out during those periods.
Right. So okay, and then you've been touring the district, I take it.
Yes.
Just a little bit at a time.
A lot at a time.
A lot at a time.
We get around.
Okay.
It's a big district. It takes some time to get down to different parts of it, but.
All right. Let's move on now and talk about the new universal health care / socialized medicine / whatever you want to call it. Where do we stand with this now, as far as Representative Congressman Sean Bielat? Where do we stand with that?
Well, in my view, the ideal solution would be repeal. Politically, that's unlikely, unfortunately. So I think what we can do is defund. I think almost all of us want people to have health insurance. I know I do. The question is how you extend that reach.
Well, we have it in Massachusetts. It's not exactly been a resounding success.
That's right.
And it's funny because we're the only state that had it prior to this, and when they were doing the pitch for it, they never mentioned us.
Right.
If it was so good, then why aren't we out there?
As a poster child, that's right. So, but in my view, the way you would get universal health care, the way you would get, you're probably never going to get to universal, but the way you would extend the reach of health care is by allowing market forces to do what market forces do best. So start with the no-brainers, allow interstate competition. That will bring more insurers into the market.
Right.
It will lower costs because they'll be competing with one another, because some insurers will choose to go after certain demographics, some will provide different, just like you have